Hello everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, SOC in the Cloud, a review of Arctic Wolf SOC services, sponsored by Arctic Wolf. My name is Carol Auth of the SANS Institute, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Sonny Sarai, SANS GIAC Advisor, and Sri Karnam, Director of Products at Arctic Wolf Networks. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface. We will be answering them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Sonny.
Thank you, Carol. Welcome. So I want to start with the introduction. No company with at least some type of connection to the internet is safe from having their systems hacked and their data being stolen. Most companies store or transmit some type of sensitive data that could be monetized either by a malicious individual or a malicious organization, whether it's protected health information or personally identifiable information or payment information. But in today's world, it is imperative for organizations that wish to succeed to have an online presence, an example being an e-com system, or just be connected to the internet, such as user workstations. But there's a risk of always being connected, and that's the threat against cyber attacks. Organizations are prime targets for attackers, as the payoff can be quite large. Enterprise-level organizations have experienced this firsthand, and as a result, most have implemented some model of a security operations center. But there are challenges with implementing a SOC. One is it's expensive. There's a large investment in technology, training, and tuning, and it can take months, if not a year or two, to implement a fully functional and effective SOC. It's out of reach for a portion of the business community, specifically mid-market organizations. They may lack the budget for this type of initiative, but yet they most understand that it is extremely important to have effective detection capabilities. So then you have the CyberSOC. They provide a customer a SOC as a service solution. It's a fully functional SOC with all the technology, detection capabilities, and the skilled and experienced staff needed to run a successful SOC, and it's hosted by a service provider. So we reviewed Arctic Wolf Network SOC as a service solution, and we wanted to review it from the perspective of a customer. Our review focused on 5 areas. The onboarding process. What was the time that it took to be up and running in terms of having your system logs as well as your flow data being captured by Arctic Wolf sensor and subsequently sent to the SOC for analysis? What is involved in the pre-setup to setup phase? And was this whole process seamless, or was there a bit of complication to it? Customization. We know every environment is different, so every environment has different alerting and monitoring needs. An example being, you could have one segment which might be mandated under compliance regulations like PCI, and those areas may need to be more heavily scrutinized in terms of monitoring and alerting rather than, let's say, a QA environment. Then we had mean time to detect. How long does it take to detect a security incident in the monitored environment and subsequently let the customer know? Then we had the customer portal. How user-friendly was it? Was there a bit of clutter? Was it easily presented? Was there overly technical information? And what information was in the portal? And what was the ability to create, update, review tickets, basically to conduct ticket management? And then lastly, there was the benefits of having a dedicated security engineer. What was their expertise and or skill level? Were they flexible and nimble to new ideas? And what was their ability to speak at a high level as well as technical? The reason we felt that was important was in a breach or a major security incident, the dedicated security engineer may not be just speaking to somebody from the IT team or the information security team. They might be speaking to somebody in management, even as far up as, say, C-level. Then we have the architecture, what's under the hood, what's happening in the back end that the customer doesn't see. So I'll briefly go over this, and then I'll ask Sri to elaborate on some of the points that I'm making here. So the first is, it is a cloud-based architecture. They're a distributed cloud-based SOC delivered through a subscription service. They are a SOC as a service. What that means is they combine human and machine intelligence to analyze millions of events in real time to offer 24/7 threat detection. There's log retention. By default, I believe that they store for 90 days, but they do have the capability to store for longer. Where this helps the customer or helps us is if you're mandated by a compliance, say PCI, then there's a log retention requirement of PCI. You can ask Arctic Wolf to store those logs for, say, a year, and that will meet the requirements for logging under PCI. And then you have customization, sorry about that, the customization rule engine. Each customer is different, and the needs of each customer will have some level of customization. So we wanted to see what was how the concierge dedicated security engineer could meet those needs. So Sri, could you elaborate on some of these points?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sonny. Again, thanks everyone for taking some time. So we have this a big world-class SOC that we've built, and we're just trying to talk about what's under the hood and how we provide that as a service. So what we have done is we've built a big Fortune 500 type of a SOC that most mid-market companies and small companies cannot afford. But because it is it's a distributed SOC completely built on cloud, it has some of the benefits where you can use it, you can consume it as a service. You don't have to worry about hardware operation, maintenance, and all the good stuff. And also, so we've built an elastic stack based SOC. So it's based on all of the ELK stack technologies from Kibana to various technologies, and we have about tens of threat feeds. We have some machine learning capabilities, some artificial intelligence capabilities. We've made sure that the cloud-based architecture supports multiple roles within organizations. So we have security architecture, an architect who architects the overall solution and makes sure that each of the components within the SOC is disposable. So for instance, today we use ELK stack, but that doesn't mean that we have to marry them, and we can go we can change any of the technologies based on how we want to catch the bad guys, and that's how we roll. And then so that's based on some of the technology we have, and what's the benefit is because we put everything on Amazon Cloud, we also have all the benefits of the AWS Cloud. So for instance, if you have to do a log retention from say 90 days to 7 years, think about all the things that our customers have to go through, right? So versus here, it's all license based, and you don't have to worry about hardware operations, software backups, and all that good stuff. So building a SOC has 20 different components and multiple roles. I didn't even speak about the SOC analysts and the SOC engineers, and they all do different things. So we have hunting teams, we have a team that analyzes all the alerts. So our architecture consists of all of those various components. So to summarize, what we have under the hood is we have this really big SOC that we've built. We are currently on a version 11,500 in 4 years, we update our SOC every 2 days. Every alternate day we have a new version, and then that's how we've been rolling. Sometimes I think we have multiple versions coming on the same day, and that's how we keep updating all of those. And then customization rule is also something, because since it's a big SOC which is on a distributed mode, if we find out problem from one customer, or if we see one type of threat and attack without even our customers having to notify us, we're able to sort of distribute all of those things. I think so. That's the cloud-based architecture that we have. Sonny, back to you.
Hey, thanks, Sri. So next, what we needed to do even before we started the service evaluation was set up our test environment. We created a scaled down sample of a mid-market organization. So we had 3 network zones, the internal zone, the DMZ, as well as the external zone. We had 2 web servers reside on the DMZ, and we actually exposed it to the internet. We had an internal zone, which was an Active Directory domain, 2 domain controllers, a Squid proxy, a file server, and 2 Windows 7 workstations, as well as we created a a command and control system on an external network, completely independent of our test network. And the reason we did that was to simulate a real-world attacker. We implemented or installed Kali, and we used Metasploit to create the malicious payload to then act as a command and control system. So then we had the setup. So prior to even the kickoff call, we had a questionnaire to fill out the onboarding requirements. Now, the information that they required was such examples like the primary and backup contact information, sensor shipping information, the network information to configure the sensors with, because it comes pre-installed, pre-configured. You just got to give your IP addressing information, and they'll already have configured that. So you, as the customer or us, didn't have to do anything other than just cable it. They also wanted a network diagram, and the reason they wanted that from our perspective was to be able to see our overall network and then tell us where best to install these sensors. And then finally, they wanted a list of an external IP or domain to conduct external vulnerability scans with. Then we had the kickoff call. Now really the kickoff call was just to go over the questionnaire, to clear up any issues that our dedicated security engineer had with us, and vice versa, that any questions or clarification that we as a customer had for Arctic Wolf Network. They have a setup documentation page, and I tell you, that setup documentation is rife with a lot of great knowledge base articles. The knowledge base articles we found were very easy to understand and came with a lot of screenshots, so you could easily follow through and able to configure Active Directory logging quite easily. So the first document we evaluated actually was the Active Directory, or configure Active Directory to send login events to the SOC. Now Arctic Wolf's documentation provides two methods for sending AD security logs to the SIM. There's the automated method, which takes about 10, they advertise as taking about 10 minutes for the domain controller to start sending logs to the sensor, and it's comprised of 3 stages. It creates a group policy to audit logon events. Secondly, you download and run a PowerShell script that's written by Arctic Wolf Network, and it actually checks for prerequisites, sets up an account in AD to talk with the sensor, as well as configures the appropriate access to send logs to Arctic Wolf. Now, we fully understand that some environments, some organizations may be very apprehensive on configuring or installing, or sorry, running a PowerShell script that's external. But the great thing about the PowerShell script is anybody who's got that type of skill level can open the PowerShell script and vet it for any issues. Now, if by chance the environment does not want anybody to run any external script, there's a manual method which is also documented. It does everything the automated method does, but takes a bit longer. But suffice it to say, we chose the automated method, and we actually found the process of setting up a domain controller to send to the logs very smooth, and they acted as advertised. It was under 10 minutes, and we verified with the Arctic Wolf team that they were receiving the Active Directory logs. The setup page also contains articles on configuring DNS logging on Windows servers, as well as how to set up the sensor, and I'll discuss that in more detail momentarily. The setup documentation also contained articles on sensor types, and the sensor types were there because of different bandwidth capacity, as well as the sensor installation methods. So it provided us different options on how to install the sensor. One was an internal and external tap, mirroring, as well as inline. Now, inline, we chose inline because it inspects all traffic at wire speed, and the flow inspection happens in real time. So you can see here in our diagram, you've got the switch, then we had our sensor, and then the firewall. So the data has to go through the sensor, which means it must be analyzed. Then we have our concierge security engineer. As stated before, it's our dedicated security engineer, dedicated to our account. So we established a working relationship with our CSC, and over time, through all of our formal meetings and our ad hoc meetings, we really established a good relationship working with someone, working with our dedicated security engineer, and we quite quickly determined they've got a lot of expertise and experience in alerting and monitoring and incident response. So there was a lot of value there. So the benefits that we found, that it was a single point of contact. Everything is done through, let me see here, sorry about that, guys. Everything is done through the CSC from customizing alerts to personalizing how the customer is notified of security incidents. The great thing is customers do not have to learn how to use a new product or configure any type of application as it relates to the SOC. Now, this provides tremendous value to a mid-sized organization who may have a very trimmed down IT team, and they need to be focused on other areas of the business. There's also a deeper understanding of the customer's environment over time, such as what we felt with our CSC. They learn the environment over time from analyzing the logs, understanding the network topology, and from all the meetings that we've had, both ad hoc and formal, and they were able to make more of an informed security recommendation for our environment. They also have experience dealing with security incidents. We can leverage the CSC's experience in dealing with similar incidents to help us with our own investigation. Now, where that helps, the value that it provides us or as the customer is when you have a security incident that happened for another customer that they're monitoring for, and this is a threat that's becoming more global. Once the Arctic Wolf team has created the indicator of compromise and implemented these type of alerts and monitoring capabilities, they can transparently move that over to us as well, or the next customer. So you really leverage that experience. And as I stated before, there's no need to learn new products or technologies as it relates to the SOC. Where this really helped us is you don't have to worry about upgrades. You don't have to worry about patching as it relates to the SOC, because this all happens behind the scene. We also have a monthly meeting with the CSE. Now, I'll get over, this is part of the portal. You've got the security score and the configuration, which I'll talk to momentarily. But I want you to look at the bottom, look at the observations, the investigations, and the reported incidents. You've got the number of events, or sorry, they call it observations. So in Arctic Wolf terminology, an event or a log event is known as an observation. So the number of observations ingested by the sensor for this sample was 3 million. The total number of investigations that was vetted by the security engineer was 1,600, just a bit over 1,600. But the actual number that got to the customer was 12. So from 3 million to 12. That is a massive time saver. So analyzing millions of events in-house for legitimate security incidents can use up a full-time resource. So one of the biggest benefits that we found a CSE provides is reducing false positives by vetting these events to find meaningful and actionable security events, applying context and recommended actions so we knew what to do with the incident. Basically, the executive summary provides an overall security posture of the environment. It's the results of the monthly external vulnerability scan, if applicable, and just a general security review. So we found a lot of benefit in this. Then we have the customization rule engine. Now, as I stated before, we believe that every environment is different. So they all have different needs in terms of monitoring and alerting. So for us, we felt customization was extremely important. So we started off by ranking our assets. We set out to identify the critical assets in our lab, the domain controller, the exposed web server, and an example for another customer is some assets may have a PCI or some other type of compliance regulation mandated to it. So customizing according to those needs must be adhered to. So these systems we know would be more heavily monitored, have additional alerting capability, or have additional alerting mandates compared with other areas of the network. And how fast could our CSC customize the alerts for us? Well, they were very open, they were very flexible, and very nimble in ensuring that they could configure the service to work within our operational process. Then you had ranking severity. We identified what constituted a severity 1 alert and then a severity 2. But for the interest of time, we really only focused on a SEV 1 and a SEV 2. So for example, a SEV 1 for us was a ransomware attack. A SEV 2 was an evidence of a compromised system. We were also able to establish a workflow or build a workflow with our dedicated security engineer. So example would be a SEV 1 alert constituted a phone call to us, as well as an email and a ticket being generated. A SEV 2 alert, we didn't need a phone call, we only needed an email being sent and subsequently a ticket being generated. And lastly, we were able to rank alerts. We applied alerts, in our case, on specific user accounts. So alerts coming from members of the domain admins group for a login that's happening at 2 a.m. in the morning, we wanted to be notified of that immediately, as opposed to, say, a developer logging in at 2 a.m. to their workstation. And then we have the customer portal. And you connect over HTTPS, which brings you to the dashboard. And within the dashboard, you have a high-level status of our environment. We can quickly assess the security health of our environment through Arctic Wolf's perspective. It provides visibility also as to what our concierge security engineer, CSE, is working on. And you can see that by clicking on the link on the far right where it reads tickets requiring action. But we found the portal to be well designed, not cluttered, and very easy to navigate around. So I'll briefly go over some of the components of this dashboard. On the far left, with regards to a security score, you can see that we were graded at a C, not very good. But we realized our CSE uses a few different criteria when we spoke with him about how they determine the security score, one being a configuration of the customer environment, our environment. And what that means is, do we have the necessary security tools in place to make sure that we're at an adequate level of security posture, such as an antivirus solution, a perimeter firewall, an intrusion detection system. The next criteria they followed was a responsiveness to tickets. How well do we respond to a security incident? And the reason we got a C is we kept our tickets open, but because we were so slow in responding to our tickets, that got us that low grade. Next, you have configuration. The configuration icon, it identifies what devices are currently logging to Arctic Wolf and what devices are not. So it's in this section we're able to determine if there are other security-related logs we should be sending to Arctic Wolf, such as network discovery logs, vulnerability scanner logs. It helps give Arctic Wolf's security engineer greater visibility into the security posture of our environment. And then you have the sensor check. And it's pretty self-explanatory. It tells us the health of the sensors that are, as well as the traffic flowing through the sensors. Now, it not only tells us if the sensors are working correctly, but we can also determine a baseline, a very rudimentary baseline of normal traffic to compare against when we're investigating anomalous behavior. But I want to emphasize here, it's not up to us or the customer to be notified or consistently check the health of the sensor. That's there just for us to look at. That's up to Arctic Wolf. It's their responsibility, and they handle that well. Oh, I forgot the tickets and data tab. Sorry about that. So we can manage our tickets, our open tickets within this window. So on the top dashbar, or on the top bar, you see tickets. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can do your ticket management there. But I want you to focus on the data tab as well, just to the left of the tickets. The information in the data tab contains a summarization of log data. Now, it's there to aid in our investigation. It's a starting point to pivot from and filter on. So examples include, what are the devices on your network? What are the protocols being used which are flowing in and out of your network? And what are the categories, such as hacking, as well as the location of the traffic? So it gives you both source IP and destination IP. So we wanted to leverage the portal. Our objective here was to test the portal's capability to assist with incident response, and can it assist with defense strategies? So our first scenario was to identify source attacks against our internet exposed web server. We wanted to see if we can leverage the portal to quickly determine if we're getting attacked or reconnaissance being conducted on our website in the hopes of discovering a hole. So in our mock environment, as I stated way back earlier on in the slides, we've set up a website that sits in our DMZ. The site is accessible over the internet. We didn't want to simulate an attack. We wanted to actually expose the website, knowing full well there's going to be reconnaissance conducted on it, or even attacks in minutes, if not hours. So on the portal here, you can see we filtered on inbound traffic direction. We chose all sensors. Now, we could have tightened that up by filtering on the sensor residing in the DMZ. However, we left it at all sensors. We were able to quickly determine the amount of traffic hitting our web servers. We could drill down even further to get the source IPs connecting to the web server, and that's denoted by the drill down icon to the right. And so we could drill down to further to get the source IPs, but we could also get visibility to find the countries that these attacks were originating from. So in our case, we were receiving traffic from Russia and China. So how does this information help us? What is the value here? We're able to get meaningful information about the attack quickly. We're able to make a more informative decision on how we're going to defend against it. For example, if our site that we exposed to the internet was an e-com site and we only service North America, then we really don't need to see traffic coming from the Eastern Hemisphere, such as Russia and China. So we could implement some measure or an IP address-based geo-block. And we understand there's no silver bullet, but it is defense in depth, and we fully adopt that strategy. We also discovered the IP addresses coming from Russia and China were known malicious IP addresses. So from just getting the information here from the portal, we could, if we have a web application firewall, or we could purchase a web application firewall, we could configure it to block based on blacklisted IP addresses from reputable threat feeds. The point we're trying to make here is that the information we need to understand the attacks was easy to get to in the portal. It was clearly presented so the right assessments could be made quickly. The next test case with the portal was to demonstrate a scenario where we needed to investigate who or what system was browsing to, say, a less than reputable site. So the applicability here is being able to investigate if someone clicked on a malicious link in an email, someone went to a compromised website containing malicious code, or someone abusing the code of conduct by browsing to websites that violate the corporate policy. So again, here I'm going back to that data tab, which is a starting point. So we started off here and selected categories as our starting point. We selected interesting categories. The reason we did that, there's a subcategory, a hacking subcategory within the interesting category that you can look to see for any type of unusual behavior. And anybody, in our opinion, other than the security folks navigating to a hacking site should sound some alarm bells. There are other categories to filter on. It gives a very high-level overview on where your traffic is going. You can then ask your CSE, your dedicated security engineer, for more detailed information. So in our case, we had one device reported browsing to sites in the hacking category. But if looking at the screen, it also provides us traffic direction. It tells us there's bidirectional communication to a site. So an example here would be if there's a system that's been compromised by a command and control system and you're seeing bidirectional communication, which is outside the norm, it's here where you can it's a starting point to start your investigation from. You also have the time drop-down field, which can be very helpful in determining when the communication to a site began. And going back to the example of command and control, if we suspect a system was compromised and was speaking to a command and control server, we could go back in time and look at the top talkers outbound. This would be a great starting point for our investigation, which we can then bring our CSE, our dedicated security engineer, to help with a more thorough investigation. Actually, we drill down even further to determine what the site the user was browsing to. And this was categorized as a hacking site. Specifically, we believe it was a site on jailbreaking iPhones. So how is this important to us? Just this information. We can confidently shut down the bad behavior and block the site. It can be used as part of a training program to increase user awareness. So overall, we found the portal interface to be very intuitive and easy to navigate, with little training was needed on our part. So to reiterate, the information we were looking for was easy to get to within the portal. It was clearly presented so the right assessments could be made quickly by the customer, by us. Now we wanted to test the mean time to detect. A critical part of our review of Arctic Wolf's SOC-as-a-Service was how quickly its SOC can detect security-related events and subsequently send us an alert. It is imperative to have a low mean time to detection. It could be the difference between containing a security incident or suffering a breach. So to review this, we simulated real-world attacks as well as system compromises. So our first test case was detonating ransomware in our environment. Now, we started with a ransomware attack because ransomware has become the primary threat impacting organizations, according to a recent SANS survey. Our narrative in this case was a bad guy targets individuals with a well-crafted social engineering email, I want to state that we decided not to put an antivirus or any type of email filter solution in our test lab. The reason we decided this was we wanted to solely test Arctic Wolf's ability to detect ransomware based on log and flow data. We wanted to run these tests in the early hours of the morning to test the response time after hours. So the story went like this. A phishing email was sent to our victim email address that we set up. It had an attachment labeled invoice, which contained the ransomware. The victim was running a Windows 7 fully patched workstation joined to the domain. The victim opened the email, clicked on the attachment, which infected the Windows 7 system files. They were getting encrypted at a rapid pace. We got a call from Arctic Wolf's team within 5 minutes that we were infected. We spoke with the engineer, and the reason it took 5 minutes was he was vetting the alert to ensure it was not a false positive, and then a ticket was subsequently generated. Now, the ticket here contains the source IP which was infected, the destination IP it was communicating with, and the type of ransomware which was used, the port information, and the infection time, as well as the recommended actions. Along with the ticket, we had a spreadsheet containing more detailed information which was sent with it. We're able to see when the communication began with the offending IP address. Now, this helped us to identify in and around the time the security incident occurred and focus our investigation from there. So we can leverage the CSC's experience by asking them to pull up events that seem suspicious around this time. Because at this point, we don't know how the system got infected, but we can begin investigating how it got infected. So although Arctic Wolf doesn't primarily focus on prevention, they can detect this malicious behavior and notify the customer very quickly. This allowed us, the customer, time to contain the threat. So for example, in a real world scenario, they can block the attachment at their email gateway if the ransomware has not been identified by any AV signatures. They can then block it at their email gateway, or they can create an indicator of compromise based on Arctic Wolf's detection criteria to see if any other systems are infected. The second test we wanted to do was test the sensor's capability to detect a compromised system. Specifically, we were testing the sensor's intrusion detection system, their IDS. We decided to use the Metasploit from our attack system to create a malicious PDF, which when clicked spawns a interpreter shell and then fully compromises the system. We sent the PDF in a phishing email, and then when our test victim clicked on the PDF, it was infected. The system communicated back to our CNC system, as I stated, which was on a separate external network. Now, as soon as that communication occurred between the compromised host and our command and control system, there was a detection. We know this because a ticket was subsequently generated and an email sent. So the ticket here shows the IP address of the impacted system, the IDS signature which triggered the alert, and most importantly, a call to action, just like in our scenario 1. It's one thing just to tell us or the customer what occurred, but the big benefit from having this dedicated CSC is getting actionable advice from these engineers and analysts on what to do next. Having the IDS, flow data, and log data, a log collector, all in one appliance gives Arctic Wolf the capability to correlate events quickly. The sensor doesn't have a dependency on any external tools, which is a big win. In this case, the IDS detected malicious code from analyzing traffic, all done within the same appliance, or within the same sensor. Now pricing, again, I'm just going to briefly go over what we learned about the pricing model, and then I'll ask Sri to come in and elaborate on that. So it's a straightforward pricing model. We found it to be predictable pricing framework that's easy to understand. It's based on a number of users, servers, and sensors. Typically, the number of sensors is based on the number of firewalls or network segments, and there's no additional charge based on data volume. So Sri, can you elaborate on this?
Sure. Thanks, sir. Thanks, Sonny. I think I think you've hit the major aspects of the pricing. So let me just give sort of overview. so that when people are reviewing this, they sort of understand why this is important and why they cannot get this in other parts of the SIEM. I think primarily this is a service, SaaS-based business model. So it's a fixed subscription, which means you as an end customer can predict your pricing at any point of time. So there's no surprises. We're primarily the primary number for which we base the price is the number of users or the number of that you have. So to give you a crude analogy, think about Google Apps or the G Suite or the Office 365. So we're priced like Office 365, and we're priced around as much as price Office 365. So you can imagine the kind of SOC as a service you can get for the price of Office 365 in a similar business model. And particularly it's important because I've been in the SIEM companies for the last 6 years before Arctic Wolf, and I think when I was running the product management, so we used to price most of the security solutions based on the data volume, velocity, and variety on all three aspects. So depending on how fast you want to consume the data and the breadth of the data consumption and the data volume per day, either in the EPS or in the sometimes all three is how we used to price, and that's very, very expensive. More than being expensive, you might start small, but then very quickly within 6 months it gets out of control. And we looked at some of those things, and we decided that especially for the mid-market companies under 5,000 employees, it works best if they can predict how much they're paying this year, next year, based on their ramp-up size with the number of users. It could include employees, vendors, contractors, consultants, and all this good stuff. And we also have some base prices for service and sensors to make sure that it's not a 20-people company with 10,000 servers and things like that. But those are mostly to just cover our base. But the number one consideration is the number of users that you typically have. Over to you, Sonny.
Great, thanks, Sri. So we know SOC is an effective security solution. It provides continuous monitoring of logs and flow data looking for security events. It's impossible for a human to analyze millions, if not billions, of events per day looking for security incidents. But the challenge with SOCs are the high cost of implementation and the length of time to build them. The design phase alone can take months. Hardware, software, the technology can be very costly, and the skills training and skills development for the staff can be quite high in terms of paying them and just the overall cost for that analyst and engineer. So we felt the Arctic Wolf's network CyberSOC offering fits well with mid-sized organizations. We felt that because there's a lot of benefits that we found during our service review. The time it took for us to be up and running is significantly less than creating our own SOC. Our logs and flow data were being analyzed in under an hour, just as advertised, of us installing the sensor. They provide a comprehensive solution. They provide a gamut of offerings such as customization, a sensor all-in-one appliance, which we felt was a huge, tremendous value. You have an IDS, a log and flow collector, and external vulnerability scanner all in one appliance, and the portal was intuitive and well organized. They're able to analyze through millions of log entries and only send us legitimate security events with meaningful recommendations. They were all actionable, something that we could do. They sort through false positives so we don't have to, which is a massive time saver for the customer. And then you have one of the biggest benefits was having our own dedicated concierge security engineer working with us. We felt their expertise and experience can be leveraged to make much more informed security-related decisions. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sri.
Thanks, Sonny. Hello, everyone. I think Sonny has pretty much covered most of the. I don't think there's anything much I can add on top of what Sonny did. In fact, we asked for help from SANS to sort of help us understand if we are aligning with the customer requirements and review the product and help us in the product management process. I think this review of our service has been very helpful for us and hundreds of our customers, to make sure that we keep providing a good service. We've learned a lot in the process, and this will definitely help us, you know, help our provide better services. Um, now let me just shift gears, right? So now that since Sonny spoke about our products, there's no point in me talking about the products. So let me just give you a complete different perspective on overall security buying factors and various other solutions that you can look. It has, it should have been the other way, me selling the products. But let me just, since Sonny did a good review of our products, I just want to cover, make sure that all the attendees get the benefit of comprehensive understanding of the other types of security solutions that exist. So when based on some of the conversations and the intuition we've built, these are the top 5 reasons or the buying factors that we found through our buyer persona interviews and talking to various IT operations and security operations teams. I think, whether it's cost, complexity, capability, resources, and time to value. I think we just had a webinar yesterday to talk about how do you, what are you doing to do to improve the shortage of skills? Because that's being a very commonly spoken topic these days. I think resources is definitely a big problem. So I try to put a sort of a simple metrics to see you can look at various solutions based on the buying factors. From a cost perspective, right? So I think we just went over how this is a predictable pricing. With MSSP, you just have to write long-term contracts. I mean, I've worked for very large companies and worked with partners in the previous life where sometimes you have to sign 3 to 5 years of contract. The exit strategy is very difficult. Sometimes it's very painful. It's almost as painful as divorce and things like that. When it comes to SIM, which is a point product solution, and you could also consider, say, UTM or any other types of point solutions or security analytics type of solutions. Typically what happens is, you're looking at multiple stacks of products, its integrations, and so on and so forth. So, and then within each product you have the volume, velocity, and variety-based pricing and licenses. So I would say I think there's a very less predictability within these pricing. So from a complexity standpoint, which is the number one problem, especially in the mid-market segment, right? So when there's acute shortage of resources, and when the problem of security is increasing, the complexity is really high. Some of the solutions such as ours, which is a SOC as a service, no ops, no maintenance, no hardware, no software, no licensing, no resources, and all that good stuff. Typically with MSSP, you still have to buy the products, do a couple of integrations, and then they partially manage, and you also have the liability and stuff like that. So it's good if you're an extremely large company. I mean, if you're a 15,000 employee company and bigger, or some one of the global 2,000 companies, it makes sense for you to have MSSP, so you can sort of have a hybrid model. SIM, again, as a person who's built SIM for 5 years, we've seen a lot of failed deployments, and it's not just about some of the popular SIMs from like IBM or HPE. I'm also talking about Alien Walls or in the Elastic itself. I mean, there's so many failed deployments from our perspective, or from my perspective that I've seen. You should be aware about looking at a SIM solution. I think it takes a long time to get things done, and it's also you're creating another silo that you have to manage. But I guess from a capability standpoint, I think then nothing can beat SIM. I think it's the most flexible solution when it comes to capabilities. It's very feature rich. It can give you a lot of flexibility. However, it is a silo, and after some time, you will start managing the SIM instead of managing the security. But still, it's a good solution. I think MSSP, I think integration points are some of the pain points. And then it's more comprehensive, and incident response is integrated into SOC as a service, and this is the part that other companies typically leave. Resources, again, shared resources is fine if you're expanding a team, or if you're a smaller company and you don't think you have security expertise. I think you should probably start here. And then sort of move to shared services over the long term when you have like 10,000 employees or something. Time to, I guess, so whether it's MSSP, SIM, or any other point solutions, it takes minimum days to weeks, and we definitely can get you started in 60 minutes, and that is something that we got Sonny to also check and give us inputs on how to accelerate this for a quick deployment as well. So just to give you a perspective on where we fit in the overall stack of the security solution or technology stack in the IT operations, so you have MSSPs where they focus on operations. They give you resources, but it also gives you some amount of false positives, and then they give you broader solutions that they give it to all the customers. So you probably don't have some customizations. And SIM has cost, complexity, resources, and failed deployments. And we sort of sit in the middle where we have the best of both. We have the flexibility of a SIM through our customization rule engines, and then we have the breadth and all the benefits of MSSP, so to speak. Again, we have plenty of customers. We have hundreds of customers. I just want to give you examples of what we have done in the mid-market segment, so you can relate to it, or maybe see if it makes sense. Hornblower is a travel company that takes people in Niagara Falls and New York and Alcatraz in San Francisco. So they already had perimeter devices, but the moment we deployed our sensors, within 15 days, we caught malware that they kept missing through all their perimeter devices. We have a case study built on that on our website. It's very interesting to see how 24/7 monitoring and the technology stack that we have. I mean, it's, as I said, this is a big SOC we have that you get a piece of it. In fact, when Sonny was mentioning about the ransomware use case, what was more interesting is that activity of detonation was carried at 2 a.m. So it makes it more interesting. If the detonation happens at 2 a.m., who's looking after your IT? And we were able to give a call within 5 minutes. I think that's one example of how sort of we bring, and then we were able to free IT staff from security so that they could focus on the e-commerce platform that they are. Costa is a sunglasses e-commerce company, and same as Stevens Aviation. They were figuring out whether to hire one security engineer and give them some tools. We built the whole SOC at actually a fraction of a cost of one FTE or security engineer, and that's the kind of thing that we help our customers with. So with that, Carol, let's go over to see if we have any questions, and if you want to capture one or two questions and get see to it.
All right, well, thanks for that great presentation. We have some questions ready for the Q&A. However, if anyone has a question for our presenters, please enter it into the questions window now. Our first question is referencing location. Where is the service based?
We are based in Canada and United States, in San Francisco and a place, Waterloo, near Toronto. And we also have, we have a team of about 30 security engineers based in Salt Lake City in Utah.
All right, thank you. What about Security Onion?
I'm sorry?
The question says, what about Security Onion? But they don't really add anything more to that.
Oh, I think, okay, so I think, I don't understand the question fully, but let me see that, by onion they mean like multi-layers of security, and the more you peel, the more you cry. So how do you manage multiple layers of security is probably their question. If not, I'm just going to answer for this question.
Actually, Sri, can I interject for a moment? No, Security Onion is it's a security tool, so it contains.
Oh, please go ahead. I don't know. Okay, I haven't heard about it. Go ahead, please.
So I think what they're asking for is, have you implemented Security Onion in your solution, or do you have something like Security Onion in your ELK stack? Or Elastic stack.
My apologies. I don't know the answer for that question.
All right, well, we'll just move on to the next one.
Sure.
The attendee says it was very well presented, and they said, so what are the pain points for implementing the SOC?
Pain points for implementing a SOC. Where do I start? It takes roughly, so a couple of things. We did a couple of surveys and studies, and we have spoken to a number of customers, and also from my ArcSight Sim days, I've spoken to thousands of customers, here are the minimum 5 things you need to build a SOC. So the first and foremost is it costs about roughly 1.4 million. It takes about 6 to 9 months. Roughly takes about 8 to 10 full-time engineers. It takes a stack of about 10 different products, well integrated, bi-directional. You need a lot of automation and orchestration. You need architects that can integrate SOC and NOC. You need to aggregate every single mouse click or machine data or human generated data from your entire data center and be able to categorize, normalize, parse it, filter it, run some analytics, run machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, and then send it over to human intelligence for analysis. And then it goes through a huge amount of alerts and false positives. And it's to give another example, to give you another way of expressing, we generate about 5 billion events a day. That translates to about 8,000 or so observations, where we create about 300 incidents and roughly drill it down to about 5 to 8 tickets. So you're looking at you should build capability to capture and analyze 5 billion events and be able to build capability all the way up to creating 5 tickets from 5 billion events every single day. And that's what it takes to build your own SOC.
Can I also add something?
Please, go ahead, please.
This comes from experience because I helped build a SOC and a SIM solution, and one of the biggest pain points, along with what Sri mentioned, was the tuning. The tuning of a full-out SOC solution, of the SIM solution within the SOC, can take months, and you can be inundated with false alerts, false security events, false security incidents, which take up a lot of time. And this is where, for a smaller organization that doesn't have the staff to dedicate to this, is where a CyberSOC or SOC as a service really helps them, because they hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
All right, thank you both. Can we use the same ELK stack and build a SOC?
Short answer is yes, and the long answer is sure, if you can update it 11,500 times, because that's the current version of the ELK stack we have. And I'm not trying to be condescending, but I guess, as you know, it takes a huge amount of efforts from people to process to technologies to actually build. I think you can build some use cases. You can also integrate some of the tools, have some orchestration built into it. It really takes a lot of experience, expertise, process, money, and commitment from your executives to build a SOC out of ELK stack.
All right, thanks. What do you mean by experience and expertise of a concierge security engineer? Don't we have good tools?
Sure. I think I'll probably also ask Sonny for his perspective, but I think people is probably, from my perspective, is one of the key factors within the people, process, and technology. You can have any number of technologies, you can build all the documented process, but it's actually the people that makes the difference on using what type of technology and using the intuition. And that's why, in people, what you get is the experience and the expertise of understanding, what to look for, where to look for, when to look for, and how to fix it. And that's why I personally believe that it's the experience and expertise that you cannot replicate just by using some really cool technologies. And what is your perspective, Sonny?
Oh, I completely agree with you, Sri. Tools can take you only so far. Now, the tools are great, don't get me wrong. They really help with automation, as well as, analyzing logs or sifting through logs. millions of logs in a day, but you absolutely need the skill sets of that analyst, of that engineer, to be able to make meaningful recommendations. They're the ones that actually have those skill sets. So an example being, SANS teaches a lot of courses, and within those courses, they're teaching tools, but they're building those skill sets and how to analyze the information that comes out of the tools. So the tools can only get you so far at the end of the day. You absolutely need that skilled individual or team to be able to analyze through those tools.
Right. Do we have time for one more question, or should we end it now?
No, we have more time.
Okay, maybe one more question then.
Sure. Do you have to install agents on Linux systems to get non-syslog formatted logs to Arctic Wolf networks? I can repeat that. I kind of stumbled over that a bit.
Hey, Son, do you want to take that question based on what you did with the Kali?
Yeah, I can take that. So,
cool.
So especially with regards to Linux systems, you don't necessarily need an agent at all. We understand that installing agents is what most IT teams don't want to keep putting on systems because it adds more resources being consumed. So an example being, if you got a Red Hat system or a CentOS system, you don't have to install an agent. It comes native, and I'm going to go a bit technical here. You can use the native syslogger, which is our syslog, and it has a module which you can configure to send any file to the Arctic Wolf sensor in a syslog format. So the short answer is no, you don't have to install agents on these Linux systems. Now, on the Windows side, you do, because it's just the way it's architected. Well, not necessarily. You can use WinRM, which is what Arctic Wolf's PowerShell script does. That's how they configure Active Directory to send logs to their sensor and subsequently the SOC. So you can configure WinRM, but there are some agents which are highly regarded in terms of low CPU usage, low memory footprint, and that being NX-log. That's Nancy X-ray log. And there's actually documentation on Arctic Wolf's setup documentation page on how to install it. The reason we like NX-log, at least in the SANS world as well, is it's multi-platform, Windows and Linux, as well as a low memory footprint, and you can configure it to send any type of Windows log or Linux log to the sensor.
All right, thank you. Please elaborate on Arctic Wolf Network's definition of machine learning.
Great. So we have some capabilities built in through a lot of orchestration and automation, where once we correlate the data through all the logs, we're able to correlate some of those information against the threat feeds, threat intelligence tools, some of the blocked IP addresses and all that good stuff. And also learn it through some of the technologies that we usually don't talk about outside, because that's sort of our bread and butter. So we run a couple of correlations, and those correlated data is again combined or correlated with the threat feeds, threat intelligence from about a dozen sources that we do, and then it's also run through some of the machine learning. So we have built some sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities where based on some of the actions that our CSE does, it creates some sort of an orchestration, and also some of the manual ways in which we spread across the other teams, other CSE engineers and note taking. We've built some kind of a system that helps to improve in the intelligence that we have.
All right, thanks. I think we have time for one last question. Do you have any information on circuit bandwidth impact of your service on the average customer?
It is typically less than 1%. So, and I can give you some stats. It usually takes about once we install, because we send the data We have a sensor that sits in your network, in line with your firewall, and it has 256-bit encryption that uploads the data into AWS. And the time lag between when the data is collected and when the data is visible on the CSC screen is roughly about 3 seconds or under. And that's the time lag we're talking about. And in terms of the bandwidth resources, I guess again, we do a bit of correlation and aggregation of data, and that also helps us reduce the bandwidth significantly. We've never had any issues, whether it's a 100 employee company using plug and play offices with standard internet, or companies with 5,000 employees having a dedicated data center, and some of the even e-commerce businesses. So that's one of the efforts we make sure that and we're constantly monitoring the time lag and the bandwidth for each company to make sure that so we do some sort of a self-health monitoring of our sensors and our service itself.
All right, great. Well, with that, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Sonny and Sri, for your great presentation, and to Arctic Wolf for sponsoring this webcast, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, you can visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.